They're schemers. Schemers trying to control their little worlds. I'm not a schemer. When the chips are down, these civilized people, they'll eat each other. And here we go.
Well, hello there. How is everyone? I hope you are all well on this terrific Tuesday. That's it. It's still Tuesday, and this is video 2 of 2. I was only going to do one video, but then this doc cropped up, right? This doc cropped up. You're looking absolutely amazing, by the way. Absolutely amazing. I hope I'm not the only one telling you, because you do. Anyway, like I say, there's this doc that came out, and I don't know how I feel about it. Like, in one hand, I get it, and then in another one, I feel like, is this a continued attempt by the state to stop Brian Kohberger from potentially saying something that could potentially drop the state in a whole world of hurt? And what doc am I talking about? Some of you may have seen it, especially if you follow the docket, but it's this one here. Now, if you've been following the case for some time, you'll know that this originated not that long after Brian Kohberger was originally arrested, and this was a non-contact order, which prevents Brian Kohberger from reaching out and talking to the families. But they're now looking to extend it. Bad Santa now wants a 99-year extension. As it says, motion to extend no contact orders comes now. The state of Idaho buying through Latah County prosecuting attorney and moves this court for an extension to the no contact orders previously entered herein, preventing defendant from having any contact with the victims pursuant to Idaho Code 18920. This motion is based on the fact that the defendant has now entered guilty pleas to all offences charged in the indictment and will be sentenced on July 23, 2025. The current no contact orders expire on January the 5th, 2027, and the state respectfully requests that they be extended for an additional 99 years. And that's signed off by Bad Santa. But it's like I say, look, and I come from a place of relative ignorance in the law. Do you know what I mean? Especially US law. But it's I don't know how I feel about this situation. It was like the verbiage of it, right? It was almost like, well, we want to extend it. He's admitted to it now, so it don't really matter. He said he did it, so there isn't anything else to say. There's nothing else to say. But when I think that there are some of the victims' families that are still demanding answers, they still feel that there are questions that haven't been answered, and there's things that they would like to know, however gruesome those details are. It feels like this is the state taking that opportunity away from them. Because look, if Brian Kohberger was going to reach out to these families, what could Brian Kohberger potentially reach out and say? Could he potentially reach out and explain why he did it, if indeed he did it? Did he do it alone, or was there other people involved? But this, to me, just feels like an element of control. And again, I'm coming at this from a place of ignorance, and I'm sure that there are situations where this kind of order will protect victims, in the aftermath of these type of crimes, to prevent kind of the taunting and, to be reached out to and have potentially hideous things said. But again, I don't know how I feel about it, because this has ended so abruptly. And look, I get it that some of the families seem to be fine. So some of the families seem to absolutely be fine with how this is played out. We've had conversations on who these families are and what could have potentially been factors in their more willingness to accept how this played out. Is it people who have a better relationship with the university, for instance, who are still in this area, still have ties to this area, and, do they feel that by dragging it out or fighting against the system could have detrimental ramifications upon them and their family who are left? Who knows? But I'd like to get your thoughts and feelings on this situation, about the state now trying to basically stop Brian Kohberger from reaching out to these families whatsoever, despite, again, as aforementioned, some of these families, one in particular, who you know who I'm talking about, would absolutely, I believe, like to have some information that they feel is missing. Now if we go through the sentences and none of these important questions are asked of Brian Kohberger, like with respect of the weapon. Where's the weapon? What did you do with the clothes, that you wore? How is it that you managed to get out of this property relatively unscathed? Why did you choose this house? What had this done? Was it completely random, or was there more to this story? We can all speculate, we can all consider, connections and, whether other people were involved. It's just human nature to try and make sense of situations like this. Again, it's human nature. But with respect of where we are now, it came out of left field so quickly, so abruptly, that, I think the vast majority of people who have been following this case, including the families, are still, their heads are still spinning. We thought that this was going to trial. We thought that the prosecution had had stuff on the back burner up their sleeves, an ace in the hole perhaps, and that when it went to trial we was going to see and hear all of the missing pieces, all of the bits that are currently out and being questioned. The circumstantial evidence would slowly be brought together over a few weeks in the courtroom and be tied up in a nice bow, and there would be a decision made at the end of it. A jury of Brian Kohberger's peers ultimately making a decision on what would happen to him. But no, there was a backroom deal done. And subsequently, as we consistently say, we hear Bill Thompson seemingly allude to the fact that perhaps their case wasn't that strong, which again only raises questions as to why Brian Kohberger did indeed plea out on this. And we also have some other questions around this crime. We have a situation that would appear that in the documentation itself would seem to suggest potential of cleanups after the act. It would suggest that because of the speed of this and people being attacked seemingly simultaneously, that it would potentially point to multiple perpetrators. And we have Brian Kohberger's own words in the early stages of this seemingly request him to know whether anybody else had been arrested, and maybe that didn't happen. Maybe he was just simply talking about his family, as we know that they burst into his parents' home in Pennsylvania, and maybe he just wondered whether his family members had also been arrested at that time. We don't know, but there's a lot of questions. There's a lot of things that, again, that not only us, and don't get me wrong, we're not entitled to know anything. We want to know things, but there's no entitlements. But the families certainly have an entitlement to know any details that may keep them up at night. And the question is Bill Thompson trying to remove, because he's not been one that, in my opinion, has been making decisions based on the thoughts and feelings of the families. And look, some may suggest that, he does. Maybe the families are just at that point in their life because of what's happened to them. They don't understand that what is being done to protect them. But again, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts and feelings. Is this really to protect the families, or is it really to continue controlling the Idaho 4 flow of information to make sure that nothing is brought up, nothing is said, and the families receive no indication from Brian Kohberger that this indeed wasn't a done deal and there was more to it? Catch you all in the next one. Mwah.